What's up, everybody? Big Herc fresh out. Got another dope interview for you. I'm here with Joe. He's gonna kick some game about what he went through and his story. So let me pass the mic to my homie here and let him kind of tell you a little bit about himself. Joe, let the people know where you're from and what you're about.
Well, you know, I grew up in a rough neighborhood. I don't know, out in the Inland Empire, out in Colton. So I don't know if people are familiar with that area, out in the South Side. And you know, it was rough like everybody else, right? I mean, there's a nice area, there's a rough area. Was raised pretty much to be a good kid, right, in church, doing all that stuff. And you know, right around the time of the mid '80s, late '80s, it just started getting fun to do, you know, gang shit. And that was just a good time. I mean, the music that was popular at the time, the clothes to wear, it just seemed to kind of nudge us over in that direction. And you know, I love my friends, man. Who doesn't love their friends? Who doesn't love their second family? And little by little, I started to kind of get into that mode, and you know, found myself, you know, full-on gangbanging. And there was people who, you know, were shooting at us, and friends of mine that were shooting at them and fighting and doing all that crazy shit. And there came a situation where it was a group of a rival and myself, and somebody pulled out a knife on me, and I happened to have a gun, pulled it out, shot him, shot another guy, and one guy died, one guy lived. You know, we were kids. I had just turned 16 years old. They were also 16, 17 years old. It was a tragedy, and you know, it was horrible. So, lucky or unlucky, you know, I was lucky enough that I had a really good attorney. My father happened to have good credit, which is something that a lot of people don't have. Most people have to deal with the public pretenders, right, trying to help them out. We had a legit attorney. And what that meant for me is, instead of me going to adult prison, like an M number, like a lot of other guys at that time were doing, I was sentenced to the youth authority. And what that meant for me was me spending the next 9 years of my life up until I turned 25. I was released on my 25th birthday, actually the day before my 25th birthday. You know, so I was 24 in 364 days when I got out. And so, you know, a lot happened between that time. You know, I don't mean to just say what I did as just kind of matter-of-factly, but because I do feel bad for what happened. You know, in retrospect, at that time we were all playing the game, and we're playing it hard. But you know, inside it does choke me up, man. I wish that didn't happen. You know, in retrospect, you know, that's not who I was. It was, at the moment, that's who I was.
So, you know, a lot of people ask me about YA, because I've been to YA, I've been to juvenile hall, I've been to every facet of the system. But what was your experience going through the system before you actually got designated to a facility in YA? What was that like? I mean, because I know a lot of people don't understand that your rights and the laws are different as far as for a minor as opposed to an adult.
That's a really good question. So when you first get to YA, I mean, obviously you're just a kid and you're scared, right? You don't know what's going to happen. You only know what you heard. You only know what you've seen in movies. So when you first roll up, your best defense is a good offense sometimes. So it's kind of like a mini gladiator school. You know, oftentimes you have to deal with your enemies. And kids don't often know how to reason. They reason with their fists at that age. So as soon as you roll up, you know, everybody's going to hit you up. Where you from? You're going to hit them up back. You know, because that's the way to be at that time. So, you know, couple of fights later, everybody's friends. It's usually how that works. You know, usually people just get it out of their system. You know, and that is what it is. The court system, the way it works from then is, what I had to do is I had to go through something called a fit and proper hearing. And at the fit and proper hearing, that's where they go to see whether or not you're fit to be tried as an adult, or whether or not you're fit to be tried in the juvenile court. I know that a lot of laws have changed. Yeah, I was something called a Prop 89 case, which meant that I was still tried as an adult in the adult court system, but because of the plea deal that I took, I ended up taking a plea deal. It ended up getting reduced from first degree down to second degree with the use of a firearm and rather than having to go through the whole trial process, they sentenced me as part of my sentence to the youth authority. So I was a unique case. The vast majority of people, when they're tried as an adult, they're going to be sentenced to an adult prison, and once they turn 18 or once they turn 25, or if they fuck up in YA really bad, and I say fuck up really bad because I knew some guys that did some pretty crazy shit, but they got away with, they either got away with it or they, had maybe a counselor that was really advocating for them on their side to keep them in the YA as opposed to sending them to the adult prison.
Now, were you actually sentenced as an M number? Because I know when I was 18, I had an M number, and if I fucked up in YA, I got sent to adult prison.
I was unique. I was a Prop 89 case, and so some of you guys can look up what Proposition 89 was. I think that was passed somewhere in the late 80s in California. They had sentenced me to the youth authority with the YA number.
Okay.
YA 65329. I remember it. It's like branded in my brain. That's what it was. It wasn't an M number. However, had I screwed up really bad in YA, they could have taken me to something called a full board and bonk hearing, which is where the parole board gets together and then decides, you know what, you done fucked up. We're gonna give you that M number that you should have had to begin with, and then send you to prison.
So where did you actually get designated as far as YA? Where they send you to? What location?
Man, I got so lucky. Some of you guys might know about this place, but I got sent to Ventura. Well, I first got sent to SRCC in Norwalk, which is the reception center. That place was horrible. That place sucked. It was just dirty and nasty. Everybody trying to look as ugly as possible. This is a shitty place. Didn't care for that. Was there 3 months like everybody else. They sent me to Ventura. Now Ventura, at that time, was the place everybody wanted to go to. They had girls.
Oh man, I heard about that when I was in YA. They were talking about, they was up in there trying to fuck and everything.
Everything, man, everything. And not saying things didn't happen. I mean, you saw some things and turned away from some things. But as far as that, if that was probably the biggest problem at that place. So
keeping it real, man. I mean, did you see motherfuckers fucking?
I saw dicks getting sucked. I saw fucking. I saw.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a couple of classes that you knew you can get away with it.
Yeah.
And you knew that there was a couple of places you knew you can get away with that at, but it was what it was.
Because I know actually when I was in the boys' ranch, before I went to the boys' ranch in juvenile hall, everybody wanted to go to church just because there was girls there. And in church,
Absolutely.
I mean, like you said, young kids, you'll gun her down in church. You don't give a fuck.
People did not care.
Yeah, you didn't care.
Yeah. They didn't care, and honestly, that was the biggest problem at that place. And for that to be the biggest problem at the place, that was saying something.
That's better than Chad.
That's better than Chad. It's better than YTS, right?
Yeah,
Where the biggest problem was somebody getting killed.
Preston, they was motherfuckers with riding.
Killing each other, right?
Yeah.
Every kind of right you can think of. And so in that kind of way, I know a lot of people like to turn that, they're like, oh man, people were fucking, that's bad. I didn't think it was bad at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, from the outside looking in, that's bad. Criminals shouldn't be doing that. But it was probably one of the main reasons that I got my shit together was because it was a place where change was conducive to change.
Yeah. You wasn't really so much caught up in a negative shit. So were there a lot of gangbanging going on there, or not so much? Okay, everybody's trying to fuck.
Everybody was trying to fuck. So the people that were trying to gangbang would get shipped out quick.
Yeah.
They get shipped out really quick. So.
Okay.
People were trying to get their shit together. Whoa,
that makes sense.
That's kind of what the system is supposed to be doing, and I was fortunate to be in that environment for that reason.
So while you were there, what was the craziest thing you actually saw, man? I know people always talk about crazy stuff.
Okay, so I guess I can say, because I eventually was shipped from that place to YTS over in Chino, and so the craziest thing I ever saw in Ventura was motherfuckers getting their dick sucked and motherfuckers fucking. That was some girl. I know allegedly she was a prostitute on the streets, and all of a sudden I see full on pussy and titties. Like, whoa, I turn to my right and I see that, and I see somebody get my eye busted, seeing somebody's dick out, and she starts going down on him.
Oh wow!
And that was the craziest thing I saw there. But at YTS, of course, that's a whole different ballgame, man. And for me, the craziest thing seen there is. Seeing race riots pop off, and that's like a whole other thing, and that's or being involved in actually fighting with people, because that's where you sit in that time of your life.
Yeah, I always tell people too, like the youth authority is so much more. I mean, regular prison, I haven't been to the state, but I know youth authority as far as compared to the feds, it's just, there's a lot of testosterone, so there's a lot of shit happening real fast, and most people don't know how to, they don't know how to communicate, so there's no reasoning. It's just straight violence.
Yep. Yeah, it's a lot of lemmings, just people following the crowd, and that's the horrible side of it. The vast majority are just followers, and you got a few people just kind of manipulating the masses there. And it's sad. It's sad. I've never ever had a racist bone in my body, man. I've always, loved everybody around me. I had homies of different races growing up as kids in our hood, in our gang. And all of a sudden, just because we ended up there, they couldn't be my homie anymore. And that's bullshit. To me, that was bullshit. These were people that I broke bread with. They broke bread with my family. And, that just didn't fly with me. But the mentality in there is if you didn't ride with that, there was repercussions for you.
Yeah.
And it was tragic, man. I hated that part. I just hated that side of it.
What'd you do in there to pass your time? I mean, what were some of the things you did to try to better yourself as far as, I know you're young, so I mean, trying to, because a lot of people ask me, is there really rehabilitation or do you have to rehabilitate yourself? What'd you do?
Right. So I'm glad you asked that. Some of it's going to have to come from you. Some of it's going to come from that utterly despising that situation enough that you know that you deserve and you want better. There is some of that. Along the way, I got to give a shout out to people that mentored me along the way. Dr. Cunningham, Dr. David Warner, Dr. Abdul Mumin, my Uncle Robert John, my Uncle Jimmy Castillo, people that were college professors that mentored us and just taught us a way to think critically about the system that we're around and think critically about life and to become problem solvers as opposed to just going with the flow. So those kind of people really helped me out. The best programs that I was involved with in there was a free venture work program, right? I worked for TWA, Trans World Airlines, while I was in Ventura.
Wow.
I made enough money there to set aside $10,000 for myself when I came home.
Shit.
I made enough to pay a $5,000 restitution fee that I owed to my victim's family.
Wow.
And enough to be like, quote unquote, balling in jail, right? Where you're eating, you got stacks of top ramen and stacks of whatever else it is you want to eat.
That's great.
So that was something that was good. I took advantage of the college program. I completed 3 years of college in the Youth Authority. I did 2 years in Ventura with the Ventura Community College, and I did another year with University of Laverne in Chino, in YTS. And it allowed me, when I got home, to only spend about $1,800 to finish my bachelor's degree.
Wow.
When I got out.
Wow.
I was lucky, but I also had people along the way that when I figured out a plan, when I saw that was available to me, I figured, man, I need to finish up as much of this as possible because it's going to be really expensive when I get out. And, I mapped it out. I knew I needed to take my GED. One of the worst things that's happened in the Youth Authority is they will draw out your high school time, and people will be in there in high school for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and they still haven't graduated.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. So my thing is, they need, anybody who was my friend in there was get your GED as soon as possible, because nobody cares if you have a GED, if you got another hustle, if you got a business. They don't even care if you got a high school diploma. If you're doing all those things, if you're taking care of business in your work life or in your business or whatever it is. I own my own business now. I own a small gym, and life's good.
So, what was like going through your mind right before you got out? I mean, did you have a lot of anxiety? Did you? I mean, I know you said you went to school and you had some money saved up. Do you think that kind of got rid of a lot of the pressure as far as getting out after all that time?
Man, my mindset was to get out, hit the ground running, see it. I wanted to make up for 9 years of my life, so I wanted to see anything and everything. So I don't know, man. I remember for me, the first time I came home, it blew me away to see people talking on cell phones everywhere. Yeah, like that was the thing that blew me away. And I was walking around the mall because I needed some new clothes, and I needed to, spend some of that gate money on getting me some new clothes because, the old way I used to dress wasn't going to fly. It wasn't going to get me employed, and the women that I wanted to meet I thought were probably going to be intimidated by the old way I used to dress. So just seeing people talk on cell phones and just, yeah, I adapted pretty well. I don't know. I'm pretty lucky in that I adapted pretty well.
So once you got out, did you reconnect with like a lot of family or old friends, or did you figure like you cut those old friends off and made new friends? What was your game plan once you were on the streets?
That's a really good question. Family, of course. Family, was something that and it was the family that stuck by me. Those were the ones that I reached out to and maintained a relationship with. There was some family that kind of written me off, and so I was like, all right, whatever, just kind of let that go. Yeah, in the Youth Authority, I met some of the worst people I'd ever met in my life, but I also met some of the best people I ever met in my life. And so I wasn't on parole. There was no leash on me. So the very next day after I came out, I'm part Native American. We got together for a sweat lodge ceremony the day after I got out, and there was about 20 guys that were all good guys. Guys that I thought were going to make it. Now, don't get me wrong, out of those 20, things happen, right? A couple of them have since died. Mm-hmm. A couple of them have gone back. But I was lucky, man. I met some really good people. I have friends that I wish were here with me right now that are successful business owners, man, that are, are successful family people. They're husbands. They're doing well. They're doing stuff out there trying to help people and try to give back.
So what are you actually doing now? I mean, what are some of the ventures you're involved in that you've, used right now to support yourself?
So when I was in there, we still had the weights, mm-hmm. and so I used to love lifting weights, and I always enjoyed being physically active. And that's another thing too. That's just a little side note. Taking away the weights was a bad idea.
The worst. One
of the worst ideas, because the guys who were the most self-disciplined were the guys who were working out. Those are the same guys reading the books, the same guys who had a plan when they got out. Mm-hmm. They basically penalized and took away something extra for the guys that were doing well and are likely to do well when they get out. Enough on that. So I always enjoyed that. Physical fitness has always been something that's been near and dear to my heart. But more importantly, for me to be able to help people with that, to be able to help them with their health and fitness. Diabetes runs rampant in both of our communities. And so for me, in our family, for me that became a passion of mine to try to help people just get better health and becoming more fit. So I've been a trainer now for several years and had a gym now for a few years. Within that gym, we've done fundraisers for women who cannot afford mammograms for their breast cancer. We did a fundraiser for one of our members who lost his leg in a car accident, so we got him an athletic prosthetic, right? It was a couple of $1,000s that we needed to raise for him. We recently raised our goal was for 100 blankets. We got in 230 blankets for the homeless just 2 months ago. We're talking about doing another fundraiser here pretty soon. We also did one for the Epilepsy Foundation. We have one employee who has epilepsy. So for me, it was that was part of my passion, right? You take something away, you make the biggest mistake of your life at age 16. In my mind and in my heart, I never stopped paying for that. And so for me, I always felt like I needed to do 1,000-fold to somehow mend that, to somehow fix that, and just for my own remorse and my own regret. And so my own sanity and being able to sleep.
So as far as like getting back to the victims in the case, were you required to do any type of like victim awareness type stuff or any like victim retribution? How did that work since there was some victims in this case?
I got to say, there are some holes in the system there. I know in the Youth Authority, I was required to complete victims awareness course, substance abuse course, as well as a gang awareness course. Honestly, those classes were bullshit. They sucked. It was show up, watch a video, and pretend like you cared. That was the best programs were stuff that made me active, not being forced to sit through and watch some videos. I mentioned earlier that I paid $5,000 in restitution. I have no clue where that money went. I only wish that it went directly to the family. I don't know how that funeral got paid for. Most teenagers don't have a fund for their funeral, right? I mean, and those are expensive. You know, in the Chicano Mexican tradition, what do? We do car washes, right? I mean, you see people standing on corners trying to hustle money for a funeral. So I have no clue where that money went. I just know it was a general restitution fund. It went somewhere in Sacramento, and I never saw it again.
So as far as, I know you mentioned a little bit about like gang involvement. Now, when you got out and you made the choice not to be involved with the gang activity anymore, did you catch a lot of slack from that, or?
Like from my homies or
yeah,
stuff
from the
like
homies,
that?
Did they like let you kind of do your own thing because you kind of took it a different path?
Yeah, you know, I've ran into my homies several times, and there's never been that discomfort. You know, there's always been like, they knew what I was about, and I knew what they were about. And with all due respect to a lot of my homies are good guys, but a lot of them, to me, were all talk, and I was the only one who was doing stuff. I was, you know, so for me it was like, you know, I lost respect for a lot of them, and at that time, right? I mean, because that was the mentality as a teenager, was, you know, you could be talking about it or you could be doing it, and for me it was all about doing it, not talking about it, and
you put in the work. I mean, so
yeah,
couldn't nobody really say shit.
They couldn't, exactly. You know, they couldn't say shit. I did I did my time. I did my thing, and I'm happy for a lot of them. I even had a couple of homies that are now corrections officers, which to me is funny because, you know, I've seen them. I didn't see them get shot, but I seen them after they got shot. You know, and I knew of work that they put in, and you know, so it's kind of funny, you know, how that works.
Now, what would you tell some of the youngsters out there who are, you know, trying to gang bang or trying to, you know, rep the hood or doing things like that as far as really their future? What would you tell them,
man,
looking back?
Yeah, I know it's tough. I know it's not easy. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, but there's just more to life, man. There's more to life. Get out there, take advantage of every field trip you can possibly think of. Dream and dream big. Everything is possible. You know, even if it's one step at a time, you can't look at the next man's success or next person's success and see how they got it easy. Because if you stop doing the work, you'll never get there. And, you know, for some people, getting there is just not getting locked up. I mean, Chris Rock says it best, you know, and he says, I'm trying to keep my son out of jail and keep my daughter off the pole. Yeah. And I get that, you know, but it shouldn't be, if you're only focused on not going to jail, that's going to be a challenge. You need to focus on what you're going to do. If school is not for you, find something about school that is, because that's going to be your job up until a certain point of your teenage life. You got to find something that's going to keep you headed in that positive direction. That's going to keep you interested. So if it's art, you know, make it art. If it's going to be music, make it music. But you also want to be a jack of all trades. You have a muscle up here in your brain, not just these muscles or these muscles right here, but you know, that brain, and you got to exercise it, man. You got to exercise it in ways you don't like, and that's just going to make you a better, well-rounded person when you come of age, to deal with all walks of life. You know, off camera we're talking a little bit about, oh, you know, talking like this or talking like that, and yeah, there's certain ways that we talk with our homies. There's certain ways that we talk with our friends, and you can do business that way. And you can make money that way, but you're going to pigeonhole yourself and limit yourself to a small percentage of the population. Let's just say that's 5% of the population, even if it's about 80-90% of where you live. There's a great big world out there, and you need to be able to communicate with a greater part of that world, and that's going to be a big part of your success, is how you're able to command the English language, and or even the Spanish language if you live in the Southwest, you know, or however that is. But you still need to command the English language if you plan on really succeeding here in this country.
Yeah, you guys, so that's Joe's story. I hope you guys took some positive notes from that. This man has been there, done that, not glamorizing a lifestyle. He was able to change his life, do something positive with it, and I hope you guys can learn from that. Joe, why don't you go ahead and give me your outro, man.
Hey, thank you, Big Hurt. Man, I appreciate what you're doing. You're keeping it real to the community out there. Definitely listen to this, man. My name is Joe, man. Fresh out.
Lockdown's over. Get your yard time in. Exclusively at FreshOutSeries.com.